The topic that I'm going to discuss today is the Retired in the Philippines 2022. And you can see there's quite a few posts on here about all kinds of topics about retirement in the Philippines. And you can see that a lot of them have to do with girls and other things. This is not a story about girls. This is about how someone that's retired can fundamentally enjoy the benefits of the Philippines, that's living on a pension like Social Security and all of that. So what I've noticed here is a lot of the folks that are talking really are talking about the bar scenes and pros and cons of living here, which is good, and it's one perspective. So let me give you an alternative perspective. What I've done is I put a spreadsheet together, which you can see here, and I'll go through it briefly. I'm going to summarize this. I won't go into a lot of detail until I find out if you folks really are interested in this stuff. So what makes me, I think, a little bit special to give this advice, number one is I've lived here 25 years, full-time since 2012 when I retired. I'm married with 5 children here. I'm a grandfather. I've worked in big cities and the province. I actually worked in Manila. I lived in Makati while I was working on Naya 3 Airport. I'm a contractor by trade, and I've built many houses, including my own, and I've done some for my friends, foreigners. I live on a beach with 2 hectares. I grow organic food, grow chickens, grow tilapia. I'm 68 years old, and as I said, too many foreigners. I seem to be the go-to guy for everything from how do they get a title or check a title to my girlfriend's cheating on me, I want to get a divorce, or I wanted this, or I wanted that. So I figured I'd put this video together. So if they ask any questions, I can just refer them here. So, you know, some people may say, why the Philippines? Well, it's got great beaches, the weather's great, the food is wonderful, they speak English, the cost of living is absolutely phenomenal. It's easy to get a visa, even if you're not a resident. It's easy to get them extended. If you're an older guy, divorced or whatever, or single, age discrepancy is okay. They obviously have a lot of pretty women here. It's westernized, meaning that they have McDonald's and all kinds of things that you'd expect in America or other European countries. And you have easy access to your banks. I'm on a pension. My Social Security comes direct deposit directly to my bank account here in the Philippines. It's easy to do. So I put this in alphabetical order, so it may be a little bit mixed up, but I'll talk about 30 points, and you know, I can make this spreadsheet available if you ask for it. It's a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. You can actually, you know, add a column over here to the right and use it as a checklist and find out how well you think you can do here. So I guess one of the first things, you know, people have always asked me that are visiting, that haven't been here before, says, why is everybody burning trash? And it's actually not necessarily trash. It is a bit of trash. There's no garbage collection really to speak of, so they got to do something with it. But fundamentally, they start burning it at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and that kind of chases the mosquitoes away. And if enough people do it, the smoke kind of keeps them away. And the folks here are all cleaning their yards and getting the leaves and getting the branches and whatever else. So they burn it. It's great. So some people, especially from America, say, oh, they're burning stuff, and they get upset about it. But that's just the way it is here, so deal with it. If you're wanting to come over here and start a business, I would say forget it. Fundamentally, you can only own 40% of a business. So if you put $10,000 into a business and you only own 40%, the local partner, who has to be Filipino, can literally take your money, take your business, and tell you to go away. That does happen, and probably more frequently than not, because most of the foreigners that have substantial amounts of money gravitate towards the touristy places like Cebu, Puerto Galera, Boracay, and a number of others. And there's just people waiting in the woodwork for some stupid foreigner to come over here, lease a piece of property, get into a bit of a business agreement with them, build a nice restaurant or a restaurant and bar or whatever, only to find out that as soon as it's complete, the foreigners basically shit out of luck. So be careful. Don't even think about a business over here unless you're doing internet type business or something like that. So relative to your property, there's a buy, rent, or lease option. To build a functional hollow block concrete house, 2-bedroom, kitchen, bathroom, front porch, etc., it's going to cost you about 2 million pesos. 2 million pesos is about $40,000. But remember, you can't own the land. So unless you have a Philippine wife, building your own house and buying the land is not an option. You can, as a foreigner, lease the land and then build a house on top of it. Those leases are typically 25 years, and they're extendable. And there are a few people like myself that have properties that I can lease 25 years, 300 square meter plots, or 600, which is enough. 600 square meters is enough for a house and a garden to grow some stuff on it if you wanted to. On the other hand, renting is cheap. I say that because I'm in the province of Oriental Mindoro. If you're in the province, you can expect to pay somewhere around $100 to $150 equivalent, or about 7,000 pesos per month, to rent a 2-bedroom studio or 2-bedroom apartment type place, which I don't recommend to foreigners, fundamentally because there's normally about 10 families there and the noise will drive you nuts. But you can rent small houses on land. There's a lot of Filipino expats that own land, a small house here in Mindoro, and they rent it out, and they really like to rent to foreigners because they pay. So you could probably get a 2-3 bedroom house on 300 to 600 square meters for about $150 a month, which is cheap. So unless you've got lots of money saved, a Philippine wife, and you want to build a house, renting is really a good option, especially if you're retired. If you're like me, I'm 68. Maybe I've got 10 years left, maybe I don't, who knows. But 10 years of renting at $100 a month is a lot less than building something. Now, if you've got a sweetheart, you're going to have kids, of course you want to probably buy something and build them a house so that when you're gone, they have something when you're not around anymore. The cost of living in the province is really low. Okay, we down here in Mindoro, it's almost like the breadbasket. We have all the produce growing. We have rice, pigs, cows, chickens, all the fresh fruits and vegetables you could think about. And they're locally produced, so they don't have to cost the shipping costs to bring them to the big cities. So you're typically going to save about 40% on your food costs compared to what you'd pay in Cebu City, what you would pay for in Manila, Makati, Quezon City, those areas, Angeles City, Subic Bay area. You're going to pay 40% more than you would here in the province. So if you're on a strictly a Social Security pension, you're going to definitely want to be in the province. And I would highly recommend Mindoro for a number of reasons, which I can describe later in subsequent videos if you guys like it. Relative to dating, I've got several friends that have found the love of their life online, in bars, and just some local girls. And mostly speaking, there's the good and bad of all three. But fundamentally, if you meet a girl online, it's really hard to get to know whether you're compatible until you come and visit. And I wouldn't make any long-term commitments until you got here. There's a lot of misrepresentations, if you will, on the online area. The bar girls are bar girls, and they're a bit hard to control, you know. There are a few that have left the bar scene and turned out to be great mothers and wives and whatnot, but that's far and few in between. Your best bet is to find an area, which we'll talk about later, where you want to live. Start visiting the markets and essentially letting people know you're single. The Philippines is a very religious country, and in the provinces they're very conservative, so don't expect to come down here, find a local girl, and have her act like a bar girl. It just doesn't happen. That being said, if you're, depending on your religious denomination, there's probably plenty of nice girls, Christian girls, that you could find at the local churches. And we have, I think, just about every church you can think of down here in Mindoro as well. One other thing that bothers me, because I've lived here so long, but it's also really bad, is the disrespect sometimes foreigners have to local Filipinos, because they're the ones in the province are less educated, generally speaking, and some things they do could just get up your nose, like cutting in line or something like that. Don't curse them out, don't yell at them, you know. Slander and libel here is really kind of bad. A Filipino can yell at another Filipino, but a foreigner verbally abusing a local Filipino, they could be brought up on disrespect to a local citizen, and you can get into a world of trouble. Seriously, they could put you in the jail, take you to immigration, and deport you and blacklist you. So basically, you know, this is a very respectful country. You don't see people fighting and doing things like you do in some Western countries. So just relax. Don't be disrespectful. You know, and as I say, I try to treat everybody here like they're part of my family. The other thing that really gets up foreigners' noses is driving. Okay, the family car in the Philippines is a tricycle, and they do about 40 kilometers an hour. Some of the guys are driving around on little 125cc motorbikes, and they kind of buzz around you and everything else like that, but they're not always obeying the laws. If you come over here and you've got a pocket full of money and you go off and buy a Ford Raptor with a 3.2 liter diesel engine, and you're in the province and you're screaming along the highway, you know, you can't really get upset with the local tricycle driver that can only do 40 kilometers an hour. And they don't always stay to the right, they pass, they don't signal, they turn in front of you, they do all kinds of crazy things. So we'll talk about vehicles later, but you know, if you're driving here, just relax. Everybody here is like a laid-back attitude. You know, you'll get there when you get there. Don't go crazy, or you'll really lose your brain. I've got a really close friend of mine that I don't care where he drives his car, his mouth is going non-stop. He doesn't yell at him out the window, but boy, if you're a passenger in his car, you really go nuts. And I keep telling him, you should just get a push bike, then you're not going to be honking and going crazy. And you got to remember that the local Filipino drivers don't necessarily follow the rules. Excuse me. Food. Well, they have all the Western food you could think of here and local food. The difference is, if you want Western food, you're gonna pay a premium. You're gonna have, if you like canned beans and things like that, they're pretty expensive to ship over here. If you can eat local, and I've eaten local since I've been here, the food is quite tasty. You can do your Western variations on it and things like that. But if you're going to live here on a budget, especially if you're a pensioner, eat the local food. It's good. It's got all the same ingredients as Western food. It's just cooked a little bit different. The girlfriend deal. Oh man, if you've got a girlfriend, you got to remember she's got a family. Okay, and if you've got a girlfriend that soon becomes your wife, she definitely has a family. I had a friend of mine once say, if you really want a great Filipino girlfriend, make sure she's an orphan. Because the Philippines is very family oriented, and I love it. We take care of my wife's 90-year-old father. I've got, like I said, I've got 5 kids, and I'm a grandpa. And one of the kids is an overseas worker on a LPG boat, and he sends 60% of his money home to his mother and me every month, just because that's the way the Filipinos are. So if you've got a girlfriend, you got to understand that her family's probably going to have some financial needs, and if you're not willing to share a bit, not to be taken advantage of, but if you're not willing to share a little bit with her family as well, you're going to have a problem. I've got a good friend that just really hates giving her family money, but it's really hard for her because she's living with a foreigner. They have plenty of money, nice house, and her parents are living in a bamboo house and no way of making money, and it's hard for her to live the good life while her mother, father, and sisters and brothers are all suffering. It's not to say that you have to be the one that takes care of everybody, but it does end up being a problem for some foreigners. So if you have a girlfriend, I would highly suggest that you meet her family. How many brothers, how many sisters, do they have jobs? My wife has 5 brothers and sisters, and they all have jobs. So I've been pretty lucky that I don't need to give them a lot of financial support, but that's not always the case. So just be wary of that. The government here has rules. Okay, the Filipinos, they follow the government rules. They say wear a mask, you wear a mask. They say get a shot, they get a shot. They say follow the line, they follow the line. They say you got to have this paperwork, you got to have that paperwork. Just obey the government rules. It's not like it is in Western cultures where you might be able to break some of the rules, not the laws, but the rules. So just be cognizant of the fact that the government rules is important. If you're going to live here, it's important that you become a handyman. The Filipinos can do all your plumbing, all your electric, all your building work. They can tune your car, they can do everything that you need done. The problem is they may not always be available to get something done when you want it done. So you should know how to be a bit of a handyman, at least how to reset a circuit breaker, how to change a water pump if you need to, how to clean your air conditioner, change the oil in your car. You got to be a bit of a handyman over here, especially if you're living in the province. It doesn't cost a fortune to hire a local Filipino to do the work for you, and they're always willing and ready and able to do it. The question is, are they available when you need it done? Okay. Healthcare. Oh my goodness. A lot of rumors, I call them, about the quality of healthcare in the Philippines. Listen. a large percentage of healthcare workers that work in America and Europe and the larger cities in Southeast Asia all have Filipino healthcare providers, nurses, doctors, dentists, and the like. There's probably nothing that you need to fly back to the States to take care of yourself if something happens to you. You need bypass surgery. Yes, you're going to have to go to Manila, Makati Medical, or one of those. If you have a heart attack down here, they've got urgent care places that can keep you going until they can get you to a larger hospital. The dentists here are fantastic, and they're about 1/3 the cost they would be in the States. Hospitals are well equipped. They've got all the modern machinery. We have all the medicines you possibly need. The issue is, how soon do you need to get to a hospital? Here where I am in the province, the closest hospital is only about 2 kilometers away. And they'll keep you going. And if need be, you can get to larger hospitals, but the doctors are all the same equivalent quality. They're pretty good, really. I wouldn't worry about healthcare so much. If you're totally broken, then yeah, you probably shouldn't come in the first place, actually. The laws here are pretty straightforward. They're modeled after U.S. laws, but they're interpreted not like other countries. So don't expect that if Law A in America says this and Law A in the Philippines says the same thing, the interpretations are sometimes different. And really don't expect you're going to understand them. You know, I hear a lot of foreigners say, well, we have that law in the States, it's not like that here. Anyway, just, you know, if you end up getting involved with legal things, it's best to use a lawyer and don't assume that you know how to do it. And there's no self-representation here. You'd have to, depending on your financial condition, hire a lawyer or get one appointed to you. The next thing is location. You want to be in a big city, you want to be in a small city, you want to be in a province. Generally speaking, big cities are going to be more than 40% more expensive. So your rent in Makati could be as much as $500 to $800 US dollars a month plus utilities. So a pensioner would not be able to live in Makati. A small city, which there aren't that many of, there's a lot of small, medium-sized and small-sized cities next to each other, but you're still going to end up paying a premium to live there unless you're in the province. Like I said, if you're in the province, your costs are going to be 40 or more % lower than they would be in big cities, and especially in touristy type spots where there are a lot of foreigners, because they just drive the prices up. Cebu, for example, is almost totally Korean and Japanese now. They walk in with pockets full of money. They sometimes get a girlfriend, they rent them a flat, and then they fly over once every couple of months, and etc. And so I've got a friend that lives about an hour and a half outside of Cebu City in a beautiful compound on the beach. It costs him $1,000 a month. That's really a lot. One other small consideration is typhoons. We do get our fair share of typhoons here. So that being said, any place that you relocate to, I would avoid the heavy track areas, which are like the eastern seaboard heading towards the United States, where's that, west? Heading west, okay, heading towards like Manila, towards San Francisco. That whole coastline gets hammered. And when the typhoons develop over the Pacific Ocean, They gather their speed and power and all that. So the first land masses they hit are always over there. They always get hurt, and partly because they get a lot of rain, and the land mass is only a meter or so above the sea level. So they get hammered. So avoid those areas. By the time the typhoon transverses those areas, the next land masses they hit are heading towards Mindoro, where the next batch, but normally the typhoons are significantly weakened. We get our fair share of typhoons, but generally speaking, most of the problem comes from rain. So as long as you're in a little bit of a high area and you live in a house that's primarily concrete, you're going to be fine. Marriage and divorce. There is no divorce here. You get married here, you build a house, you buy a car, you do all that. You can't get a divorce. You can't. It's almost impossible. And if you do get a divorce, it's going to cost you millions of pesos, 2 to 3 million at least, and it'll take a long time. So if you get married here, take it very seriously. Or get married in America, where you can get divorced easily and don't have it registered in the Philippines. I've seen so many foreigners come over here. They're in their 60s, they marry a girl that's late 20s, and things go sideways for them. They've built a house, they've got property and assets, and since you can't own the land, she's got it. You can't get a divorce, blah, 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 blah. And if, depending on your visa type, she could have you kicked out of the country, even though you're married. She could say you beat her or did something like that. I've seen guys have to go home to America, 70 years old, tail between their legs, lost everything, even though he may have had a wife and a couple of kids with the girl. So there's no divorce. So before you say I do, make it sure. And so, there's no problem living with them, although it's against my Christian values. But, you need to find out what they're like, because you're not going to get out of it. So if you do come here, be a minimalizer. You don't need a lot of stuff. You need an aircon, a TV, someplace to take a bath and go to the toilet, someplace to sleep. But unlike the States, you don't need a whole pile of gadgets. You don't need all that stuff, because a lot of the time you're going to spend here outside anyway. So don't think about shipping TVs, blenders, food processors, all that kind of stuff. Don't send it. It's not worth it. Plus, as we'll talk about later, electrical isn't that reliable, and it's very expensive here. The girls here seem to like mixed babies. I've had a couple of friends that the girl and the guy got together, they had a baby. He wanted to get married and she didn't. And there are some people that say that sometimes the girls just want a mixed baby, just so that they're not as dark, I guess, for whatever reason. I'm not so familiar with all the mixed baby deals, but there are some girls that will just say, yeah, I want to have a baby, you pay for the baby, but I don't want to get married, which may be good for you. Who knows? Money. You got to have money if you come here. You got to have some form of money. You should have sufficient money saved so that if you have to get out of the country or whatever, for whatever reason, you got enough for a plane ticket. And my recommendation is you should have some kind of a pension. If you're single, well, you should be. Your Social Security is good enough. Okay, you can live in the province on probably $400 to $500 a month of your pension, which means you're going to save a bit. But your life could get complicated once you find a girlfriend and things like that. So make sure that you've got some form of income. And as I said before, the banks, it's easy to deposit money here, so you don't have to worry about payments, and your ATM cards work and all that kind of good stuff. Just remember, there's no work here. You might be able to do a little bit on the internet, You might be able to teach English as a second language. So there's ways to make small amounts of money, but don't rely on it. Next thing is politics. Philippines is very political. Different people running for different offices. That's not your business. The Philippines says you're welcome to stay here, but stay out of our politics. So really, stay out of the politics. There was a Catholic nun that had been living here for like 40 years helping the poor and the destitute. And she was spotted in I don't know what kind of demonstration it was, but she was marching with the Filipinos, and the current president had her deported. Even though she was helping the Filipino people, she was loved, she was Christian, Catholic, still kicked her out. Stay out of politics. If they can do that to her, they can do it to anybody. One of the other big things, I think, is noise. Foreigners just hate noise. And here you're going to get tricycles, dogs, chickens, sometimes even neighbors fighting, depending on how close you are to your neighbors. You got to get used to the noise. I mean, Filipinos can sit there with tricycles, bang, ding, ding, going by, and chickens doing, and dogs running up and down the street, barking their ass off. You know, the Filipinos they don't even hear it. You know, it's like they've already got it tuned out. So you got to be able to deal with noise. That's all I'm going to say. If you can't deal with noise, oh man, don't come. And you got to be patient. My goodness, if you're not a patient type person and can't relax, you'll go crazy. Things here happen very, I like to call it Latino, because it's laid back, it's mañana, it's we'll get to it when we get to it, and you know, when people have to stand in a long line at a bank, you know, I mean, everybody's used to it, you know, they start just having a chat with each other, and you know, the long lines are long lines. My goodness, I went to pay my electric bill, and I think the line had there were two lines, one going to the right, one going to the left. There must have been 50 people on each line. So, needless to say, I didn't stand in that line. I just came back later when the line wasn't so long. But nevertheless, you know, you got to be patient. And if you're not patient, you're going to have a hard time too. And what is your personality type? If you're an aggro type person, aggressive, in your face kind of a guy, I would say you're not going to like it here, because the Filipinos will wonder what's wrong with you. And you got to adopt a really kick-back, laid-back attitude towards life here. This is a retirement for you, and it seems like even the young kids are semi-retired, because their attitude is, yeah, we'll get to it when we get to it. It's kind of nice, really. And if you've always been a Type A personality, this may be what you need to give you a few more years on your life. So. Residency here is pretty easy. You know, there's multiple visa types. You can get visa on arrival, and you can get that extended up to at least 3 years, more or less. At the end of 3 years, 36 months, you fly over to Hong Kong or Malaysia or Thailand for a weekend, and fly back, and you got another 3 years. That being said, you can get a retirement visa, which means you have to have some money in the bank, or I believe an investment. So say, for example, you bought a condominium, which I don't recommend, because you'd have to buy that in one of the bigger cities, and then your costs are higher and your pension won't go far enough. The other thing is, if you're married to a Filipino, you can be a permanent resident by virtue that you married her. Now, mind you, that's not a good reason to get married, but if you're going to get married, you can get a permanent residency visa. Unlike countries like Thailand and Vietnam, even if you marry a Thai girl in those countries, you don't get entitled to a residency. As a matter of fact, your Thai girlfriend could have her residency revoked, as I recall from when I worked there. May have changed, but who knows. What are your socialization requirements? Do you need to be around foreigners or just a few? Do you like to go to a bar where all the faces are foreigners, or you don't mind going out and seeing foreigners of different nationalities? Here where I am, there's probably 15 or 20 foreigners that live here, Korean, Japanese, German, French, Canadian, American, Australian. We have a mixed bag. We get together in the local pub once a month and socialize. But if you're the type that likes to have your coffee in the morning, watch the news in the midday, and then go to the bar at night, play pool, drink beer, and see all foreigners, then you're going to be in Angeles City, you're going to be in Cebu, you're going to be in Puerto Galera, or perhaps Boracay, although it's harder to rent now in Boracay. And there's pros and cons to that. Now for me, I don't need all that foreigner interaction. I've got enough friends here I can visit, but I've also got lots of Filipino friends that I enjoy their company as well. And I quite enjoy the Filipinos. Frequently, they have a little party outside their house, put a table out. They have some what they call pulutan, and you name it, they've got it. It could be fried chicken, it can be adobo, it can be caldereta, or whatever. And it's a social event, and there's usually 7-8 guys sitting around a table just passing a common cup, and they all take their shot and they take turns drinking and having a chat, and it's quite nice. But if you're the type that likes to sit in a proper English pub drinking a beer and just around a bunch of foreigners, then you're going to be in a bigger city and your costs are going to go up. I know a guy that spends close to 20,000 pesos a week, is about $400 a week, just sitting in the pub, drinking and eating. That's a lot. So unless you're a multimillionaire, I would avoid that. You can always go where I am. I can always go to Puerto Galera in 2.5 hours, sit in the pub once a month, not become engrossed in what they're doing. The other thing is, if you're socializing where there's lots of foreigners, the foreigners either have girlfriends or they have wives. And too many times I've seen a foreigner A and foreigner B both have a girlfriend or wife, and those two girls are friends. But foreigner A is living on a pension or a small pension, and foreigner B has a pile of money in the bank. So the girls always compare how much one has versus the other. Oh, my boyfriend gives me 5,000 pesos a week as an allowance to do whatever I want, and the other one says, mine doesn't give me anything. Next thing you know, the girls are squawking, and then the one that's not getting anything starts squawking at her boyfriend, saying, "How come Mary Beth gets 5,000? I don't get anything?" And so you run into that all the time, especially where you've got 10, 12, 15, 20 foreigners, all with girlfriends, all with different financial situations. And I'm telling you, if the quickest way to start having problems with your girlfriend is have your girlfriend start comparing how much she gets to versus how much her or her friends get. So there's a downside to being around a lot of foreigners, okay? So just pick your poison carefully. If you relocate to the Philippines, any kind of tools you have, I wouldn't say power tools, because here it's 220, in the States it's 110. So none of them will work. But all of your screwdrivers, wrenches, manual type tools that you can throw into one balikbayan box, that's about the only thing I would ship here. And like I said, like I'm saying earlier, what to ship, tools and special spices. Here, they've got all the spices you could possibly want, but there may be some specialty items that you like. that are difficult. Again, if you're interested in what kind of spices they have here easily accessible versus what you should bring, leave a comment. Utilities, the electric, it's pretty reliable. Some places more than others. I have a solar system, so if the electric goes out, the solar kicks in. It's not enough to run, 5 air cons and all that kind of good stuff, but it's enough to keep the internet up and running because we have fiber here. But you do get what you pay for, and depending on where you live. Now, I'm in the province and I've got a fiber connection. It's running at 180 megabyte a second. I mean, it's pretty fast. It's probably not as fast as it is in America, but it's pretty damn good, and it's good enough to run a business on. A small generator here, it costs about $150, and it's very easy to install one. So if you have an extended outage, you can run a small generator to power your house or your flat for probably less than 300 pesos per 8 hours, and that's when you have to refill. So utilities aren't bad. Vehicles, again, I see foreigners buying big trucks, and then complaining about all the slow vehicles on the road. In the province, you don't need them because you're not going that far really. In the big cities, there's too much traffic to use them. So I'd avoid big trucks. I mean, you don't need them. They're a status symbol, yeah, but a small car. We drive a Ford Focus down here when we want it. But most of the time I'm on a single rider Honda Click, or my son has a tricycle. So, I would really consider not spending money on big vehicles. They cost a lot to run and operate, and at least down here in the province, almost all the maintenance and service you have to travel to another island. Before you commit to anything, obviously you want to travel here. You want to visit the country, and I've been here, like I said, 25 years. And there's things you learn in a week. There's things you learn in a month. There's things you learn in a year. There's things you learn in 5 years. And there's things you learn in 15 years. And there's things you learn in 25 years. Okay? So, for example, when I married my wife, she was very young, and I was in my 40s. We've been married 25 years now. And talk about a looker. She was gorgeous, but now my wife's 50. She's still pretty for 50, but nevertheless, she's 50. So visit before you come and get to know the various towns. Now, the one thing I can tell you about the Philippines, almost every foreigner type touristy place location is the same. It's the same shit in a different city. The same goes for the provinces. All the provinces, I don't care, and I've been all over the Philippines. Any province you go to, some provinces have more foreigners, some have less. I like Mindoro because of the proximity to Manila. I can get there quickly if I needed to. But whether I live in Gloria, where I'm living now, or I live in Nauan, or I live in Calapan, or I live in Baco, all these provincial cities are wonderful, and they all have the local market, they all have the local grocery store, they all have the gas station. Now, that being said, not all cities have a Jollibee or a McDonald's or a Shakey's or all that. I got to drive to Calapan if I want McDonald's or Shakey's or things like that. But then again, you may want to take a trip there once in a while anyway. But the most important thing to me, I guess, if I was relocating again to the Philippines, is proximity to foreigners if I like it, but not closer than 3 hours away, which I have. close to hospitals we have here, close to doctors, dentists, foods, gas, all the facilities you need, an internet connection, fairly reasonable and reliable electrical power. So then the next thing is, how do you feel in that particular spot? Remember, watch out for low-lying areas and baguios. I don't know too many people that visit Mindoro that don't absolutely love it, because it is a farming island and you don't have all the pollution. It's clean. You don't have all the traffic. It's very sparsely populated, to say lack of a better word, and everybody's kind of spread out. So it's a nice spot. If you're interested in more about that, leave a comment. I'll give you more details on Mindoro and the cities here. I talked about what to ship, and if your health condition is not good, you're probably better off staying around your loved ones in the States. If you've got mobility problems, you can't walk, this is a walk around type country. No matter where you go, you got to do a bit of walking or standing in line. But then again, if what you need is exercise because you're overweight or diabetes, a lot of the natural ingredients, the foods here that we grow organically, do natural cures for type 2 diabetes. So there are some benefits to the local produce. So why the Philippines? Well, the beaches, the weather, the food, English is spoken, cost of living is low, easy visa, age discrepancy if you're looking for a girlfriend is okay, they have pretty women, it's westernized, and you have easy access to your banks. Now, this is the first video I've ever done on the Philippines. If you're interested in more videos, all you got to do is leave a like. If you want more descriptions on any of the topics I have on this spreadsheet, let me know in the comments. And if you like it, you like it, and if you don't, I just spent 2 hours having some fun talking to my camera. Anyway, guys, I'm Dave from the Philippines, signing out.